We have done it. We found a common enemy. We've got Donald Trump Jr. posting the same sort of shit as AOC. The left hates the right hates the left. But everybody hates hedge funds. If you've been living under a rock and have somehow missed it, r/Wallstreetbets use their collective power to increase the price of a dying share, GameStop, amongst others. GME has had a 1,500% increase in the past 3 months alone, but this didn't happen out of the blue. Wallstreetbets selectively purchased shares which large multi-billion-dollar hedge funds had bet were going to fail using this risky technique known as shorting, meaning the higher the GME stock went, the worse off it was for the hedge funds. Now trading companies like Robinhood have halted the sale of GME, only offering clients to sell, artificially trying to deflate the price, while financial experts and hedge fund managers cry about how it's unnatural and dangerous. To show how big this is, even the well-named GME, a mining company in Australia, saw an increase because enough of us idiots decided to jump on, not knowing how the stock market works. It does seem like a lot of the noise around how bad it is comes from people who are notorious for shorting. So, to be fair, we need to understand what shorting is, what Wallstreetbets did, and then what hedge funds do as a comparison. Did Wallstreetbets see the huge flow of wealth throughout 2020 from regular people to elites and use their power to legally and fairly win one back? Or are they a group of hackers manipulating the system for their own gain? Let's try sit up on the fence and find out. So what did Wallstreetbets do? Well, they brought shares. Working out how many people were on the subreddit at the time is difficult, but in mass, they bought shares, increasing the price, regardless of external factors such as bad sales or negative press. The market relies entirely on confidence, and regardless of what the news or the stock market said, the members of Wallstreetbet had confidence in each other. Small troughs caused by large funds trading back and forth at marginally lower prices usually cause panic selling, but Wallstreetbets had their own graph, and it was just a straight line to the fucking moon. The reason for their conviction and their stock choice was because GME currently had 140% of its stock shorted by these hedge funds. Now, even without knowledge of what shorting means, that number should seem a little fishy to you. Shorting is where an investor will borrow stocks with the promise of returning them at a later date. The stocks are then sold with the expectation that the price will go down, and then the same amount of stock can be purchased at a lower price to cover the short. If you shorted 10 $1 stocks and then you sold them, you'd have $10. If the stocks then went down to 50 cents, you could buy 10 stocks back from the market for $5, cover your short, and have $5 profit. If the price was to go up, however, you still only have the $10 from the initial sale, but there's no limit to the amount these 10 stocks could end up costing you. This is why shorting is risky, and on its own it's nothing unusual. The problem lies when hedge funds tamper with the risk by manipulating the market, and not by starting a subreddit. So the next question is, what do hedge funds do? To start a hedge fund is a little different than a mutual fund you might see on TV. Firstly, they can't be advertised. The public cannot be involved. So all members must be trained investors or extremely wealthy individuals. These rules do two things. Firstly, they cause hedge funds to be exclusively for people who are wealthy and have extensive knowledge of the markets. Secondly, it allows hedge funds to work outside the watch of the SEC because it's deemed that extremely wealthy people with vast knowledge of markets would never illegitimately use that power for their own gain. Another important thing to know is the basic hedge fund structure. Each individual has a share, however the owner will be paid their share plus management fees plus a proportion of the earnings. This uneven ratio between risk and reward, as well as secrecy of the investments, even from other members of the fund, definitely encourages risky behavior. This isn't necessarily true though, because often owners will have large proportions of their net wealth in there, meaning that any risk is still potentially substantial. A solution to this is making large-scale but relatively small wins where risk can be minimized. As we discussed before, the issue with shorting is the relatively small return compared to the potential risk, so the key here is to not let the potential come to be. Hedge funds have been known to do this by using their own capital to increase the price before purchasing shorts, buying and selling in quick succession between firms to give the impression of panic selling, or even using their friends in media to spread misleading or outright false stories about companies. And don't take my word for it. Here's a hedge fund manager, Jim Cramer, saying this exact thing when he went on an internet show in 2016, obviously not realizing how permanent the internet was.
You know, a lot of times when I was short at my hedge fund and I was positioned short, meaning I needed it down, I would create a a level of activity beforehand that could drive the futures. It doesn't take much money. Similarly, if I were long and I would want to make things a little bit rosy, I would go in and take a bunch of stocks and make sure that they're higher. And maybe commit $5 million in capital to do it, and I could affect it. But it's a fun game, and it's a lucrative game, and you can move it up and then fade it. That's often creates a very negative. I would encourage anyone who's in the hedge fund game to do it because it's legal,
right?
And it is a very quick way to make money and very satisfying. But by the way, no one else in the world would ever admit that, but I can care.
That's right, and you can say that here.
I can't. I'm not going to say it on TV.
This is a really interesting interview, so I'll link it below. It is a shame, though, about the talkative guy's snivels. He must have had a cold.
This is actually just blatantly illegal.
Now, what do you get when you mix multi-billion-dollar hedge funds who use markets and media to manipulate stock with a subreddit of people who had their own plan entirely independent of the market and the media? You get an absolute shitstorm, or a heartwarming Robin Hood-like story of taking from the rich and giving to the gamers. Except the trading company Robin Hood was actually one of the first to prevent people buying GME along with other stocks and coins. Then Google nicely removed all the negative reviews on Robin Hood because fuck free speech. Having a company with fail-safes ready to prevent wealthy people from losing money, calling itself Robin Hood, is the equivalent of, I don't know, forcibly suppressing opposing ideas in an authoritarian way and calling yourself anti-fascist. The members of Wallstreetbets didn't just jump on this. Some of them have had stock for months, but this jump obviously was the culmination, leading to over $6 billion worth being lost in shorts on GME stocks alone. Now is when we're seeing companies disable buying or even forcibly selling stock, and now is when it's impacting hedge funds. The best reasoning anyone can give to why is because it's dangerous, or these poor people on the internet don't understand the risk. But the problem is they do. They perfectly understand the risk. Almost all of the risk is on the hedge funds. Each member of the subreddit only bought cheap stocks. Yes, they're worth more now, but they won't end up any worse off than they were. Hedge funds, on the other hand, are billions down. Rambling Tom. I'm not in any way against wealth, and I think the idea that someone becomes evil because they're a billionaire is ridiculous. Even say big investors, good on them. We need people investing in ideas so new companies can be made. But gambling on companies to fail? It just sounds dodgy, even without the manipulation. As I said at the start, this is a rare opportunity where the right and the progressive left are united, but it's not as uncommon as you think. A lot of people are anti-establishment. When they saw Bernie Sanders get cheated in 2016, they ended up voting for Trump. I think times like this are extremely important because there's a lot of topics where it's hard to know what's right. Say walls, guns, minimum wage increases, these are all topics which, at least somewhat, are still up for debate in the public, regardless of how certain you are on your views. Here we've got something that, regardless of your social or political views, almost everyone unanimously agrees it's black and white. So this is a spotlight because anyone who's talking about the dangers and risks is talking on behalf of the hedge fund. There's no other way to look at it. Take a close look at the commentators, media companies, and politicians that print or talk about this being dangerous. And remember, they haven't once spoke up about how dangerous hedge funds are, but will jump to their protection at a heartbeat. This is a clear sign whether they are for or against the general public. You may recognize that face, actually, and while I don't know a lot, and hedge funds have already covered their short, so maybe he's giving sound advice, I do know he's admitted to using the media in order to direct the market.
Then you would call the journal and you get the bozo reporter on Research in Motion, and you would feed that there's a Palm's got a killer it's going to give away. But what's important when you're in that hedge fund mode is to not do anything remotely truthful.
And I feel like Wallstreetbets cashing out would be a pretty nice way for these hedge funds to ride the shorts all the way back down.
And the iPhone is going to be good, right? And then you go back,
you
flip to the
certainly
long
got to
side.
use the other side.
If I was in the US, I'd also be taking a close look at how quickly the government gets involved. I know you're still waiting on your $2,000 stimulus check, and I'll be very interested to see which financial issue is solved first. In summary, fuck these people. They had set up ways to gamble on companies' success while also manipulating companies' success through their own portfolio in the media. And now they've closed, losing insane amounts of money because even with the dodgy tactics, GME is still holding strong. Reddit will get applause when they do stuff like this, and they'll get a bad name when they do shit people don't like, but being a mostly free forum, this is inevitable. There's so many people using it for so many different things. However, I think when you see this many people get involved in something on the internet, it's usually something worthwhile. Don't get me wrong, currently these guys are doing very well out of it, but if they're using their money to do shit like this, then I hope GameStop makes it to the moon. Anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate you made it to the end and hope you enjoyed it. If you did, a sub and a share would be massive. Cheers.